Would you believe that some of the most hyped Chinese EVs that Canadians were celebrating just 2 years ago are already bleeding value so violently that owners are losing $25,000, $40,000, sometimes $60,000 in resale within 18 months of purchase? Not because they got old, not because they're unreliable, but because the Chinese automotive market is moving so brutally fast that 400 out of 500 Chinese EV brands have already ceased operations entirely. Some of these companies didn't just lose sales. They went bankrupt overnight and left 160,000 real owners across the globe holding cars with no software support, no service network, and no manufacturer to call. And here's the part that nobody warned early adopters about. Consulting firm AlixPartners predicts that only 25 to 30 of the 160-plus Chinese EV brands operating today will survive financially to 2030. The rest are going to die, and their cars are going to become worthless. Today, we're counting down the 12 Chinese cars that are already becoming financial disasters in 2026, from bad depreciation to outright brand extinction. Starting at number 12, and this is the one that's going to genuinely sting because we have spent significant time praising this car on this channel. The NIO ES8, specifically the 2021 and 2022 model years, is currently losing value at a rate that would make a Land Rover owner wince. We celebrated the battery swap system, the Nomi AI assistant, the watchtower sensor layout, the premium interior that rivals German luxury. Early adopters believed they were purchasing the future, and they were. The problem is the future only lasts about 24 months in China's market before NIO makes it obsolete. The 2021 ES8 launched with genuinely impressive specifications. Dual motors, 644 horsepower, LiDAR sensor integration, solid-state battery compatibility, and an interior that felt legitimately competitive with BMW's best work. Canadian enthusiasts importing early units paid between $85,000 and $95,000 Canadian dollars equivalent. By early 2026, comparable used units are struggling to find buyers above $48,000. That is a 47% value collapse in under 4 years. But here is the specific mechanism destroying NIO's early used values that nobody explains properly. The battery as a service subscription model, the exact feature we celebrated as revolutionary, is actually actively accelerating depreciation on older units. Because 2021 ES8 owners don't own their batteries outright, potential used buyers are inheriting a mandatory 189 Canadian dollars monthly subscription cost just to maintain full range capability. That fundamentally changes the total cost calculation for any used buyer. Add in the fact that NIO's updated ET9 and redesigned current generation ES8 make the 2021 version look genuinely dated in both software and hardware, and early adopters are completely trapped. Dealers are offering insulting trade-in numbers. Private sales require explaining battery subscriptions to buyers who have never heard of NIO. The technology that made early buyers fall in love is the exact same technology making their car impossible to sell. If the NIO depreciation story is painful, number 11 is embarrassing for a completely different reason, and the story behind it should terrify anyone considering buying a Chinese EV at launch day pricing. The Xpeng G9 launched in September 2022 to enormous fanfare as Xpeng's definitive flagship, their clearest statement that Chinese technology could compete globally at the highest tier. The performance numbers were impressive, the design was premium, and the marketing was aggressive. Then within days of launch, something extraordinary and mortifying happened. The configuration structure Xpeng had engineered was so genuinely confusing and poorly structured, buyers and even Xpeng's own trained sales staff couldn't clearly explain what customers were actually purchasing. Critical features were arbitrarily locked behind illogical trim levels. Options were bundled in ways that made no financial sense. The consumer backlash from Chinese buyers was so immediate and so intense that Xpeng's CEO issued a formal public apology within weeks of the launch date and completely restructured the entire model lineup from scratch. That public catastrophe destroyed buyer confidence before most vehicles had even been delivered to their first owners. In the used market, that reputation for a chaotic launch has never fully healed. A 2022 Xpeng G9 with 40,000 kilometers is currently selling for roughly 44% below its original transaction price. Owners who paid the equivalent of 74,000 Canadian dollars are receiving dealer trade-in offers of $38,000 to $41,000. Meanwhile, the comprehensively redesigned 2024 G9 launched with a completely logical configuration structure, better software, meaningfully improved range, and a fully rebuilt reputation. For slightly more money, Buyers can have the correct version of this car. That means every 2022 unit is competing directly against a much better, more trusted, newer model for marginal additional cost. The 2022 G9 buyer unknowingly purchased Xpeng's very expensive public beta test. They are paying for that privilege now. Number 10 proves something critical that every Chinese EV enthusiast needs to understand permanently. Even BYD, the most unstoppable force in global automotive manufacturing, can absolutely devastate its own used market values through its sheer pace of self-disruption. The BYD Tang EV first generation, specifically units manufactured and sold between 2019 and 2022, represents one of the most dramatic, owner-friendly to financial disaster transformations in recent automotive history. When it launched, the Tang EV was a legitimately impressive achievement. A 7-seat electric SUV with 505 horsepower, premium interior finishes, and a range that was genuinely competitive for its era. Early adopters paid the equivalent of 68,000 to 78,000 Canadian dollars for top specification configurations. They felt smart. They were supporting the Chinese EV revolution early. Current used market values for those same units are now sitting at $29,000 to $34,000. That is a 55 to 58% value destruction in under 4 years. The mechanism is almost insultingly simple. BYD launched a comprehensively superior Tang generation in 2023 equipped with blade battery technology, delivering dramatically improved range, a completely redesigned interior with meaningfully better materials, substantially improved onboard software, and a more competitive base price. The new model made the old version look like ancient history at a glance. BYD then aggressively slashed pricing on new Tang units by up to 34% to accelerate market penetration, which crushed used values further. The brutal truth for any BYD buyer right now is this: BYD operates on product cycles so aggressive they compete primarily with themselves. What feels futuristic in 2024 is technologically buried by 2026. When the manufacturer's own relentless innovation is your biggest financial enemy, you have bought into a depreciation cycle that has no bottom. Number 9 is genuinely heartbreaking because the Li Auto 1 was celebrated with legitimate justification as one of the smartest, most practical Chinese EV purchases available anywhere. The original Li Auto 1 launched in 2019 as an extended-range electric SUV that solved real problems real families had. No charging anxiety, practical 3-row packaging, premium interior execution, and a range extender system that worked seamlessly in all weather conditions. It became China's best-selling new energy SUV by substantial margin and deserved that success completely. Canadian automotive media praised it as definitive proof that Chinese automakers could build genuinely desirable family vehicles. Early Li Auto 1 owners felt vindicated and intelligent for buying Chinese early. Then Li Auto did something that destroyed every original owner's financial position almost overnight and felt almost aggressive in how comprehensively they did it. They launched the L9, L8, and L7 in rapid succession between 2022 and 2023. Every single new model was dramatically superior to the one in every measurable category. Better EREV efficiency, meaningfully better interior quality, superior autonomous driving capability, more advanced safety systems, and substantially more technology per dollar. The new L series made the original one look like a development prototype by direct comparison. Li Auto then discontinued the one entirely, with no fanfare. Current used market data shows original Li Auto 1 units selling for 55 to 62% below original purchase prices. Vehicles that cost the equivalent of 54,000 Canadian dollars new are finding buyers at $20,000 to $24,000 on used platforms. The cruelest part? Li Auto's brilliant marketing for the L9 and L series uses language and imagery that reminds the market daily of how primitive the original one has become. First mover advantage in Chinese EVs is not an advantage. It is an expensive front row seat to watching your investment evaporate. Before we reveal number 8 through number 1, which includes a brand that suspended employee salaries before going bankrupt and left thousands of owners with cars that are physically turning into software bricks right now, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Number 8 is the Neta brand from Hosan Auto, and this one matters for Canadians specifically because Neta had serious Western market ambitions that influenced many international purchase decisions. Neta built genuine momentum with the Neta V and Neta U as affordable, feature-rich EVs with legitimate technology credentials at competitive price points. The brand sold over 60,000 vehicles in China in 2024 and established export operations across Southeast Asia and was actively planning broader Western market entry. Canadian EV watchers were paying close attention. Then 2025 happened, and the situation deteriorated rapidly. Neta announced severe layoffs so dramatic that multiple Chinese automotive journalists reported the entire research and development department had been eliminated completely. Not reduced, eliminated. When a car company eliminates its engineering team, there is no recovery path. Software updates stop. Planned feature rollouts cancel permanently. safety system improvements cease. The practical ownership nightmare that follows is exactly what NIO founder William Li warned about when he predicted the most intense competition in Chinese automotive history was imminent. Current Neta owners internationally are discovering the specific horror of owning an EV from a company with no R&D capability. Over-the-air updates, the feature that makes modern EVs progressively better over time, simply stopped arriving. The infotainment system that was competitive in 2023 falls further behind monthly with no fix coming. Insurance companies in multiple markets are becoming reluctant to underwrite Neta vehicles given the brand's uncertain operational status. Thai government emergency funding of $215 million was injected in early 2025, but automotive analysts widely describe this as insufficient to restore full operational capability. For any Canadian considering a Neta purchase based on earlier enthusiasm from this channel or any automotive media, the brand's 2025 situation represents exactly the ownership risk that Chinese EV market volatility creates. Number 7 is the most directly Canadian relevant entry on this entire list, and it affects buyers who purchased through legitimate authorized Canadian dealerships. The MG ZS EV first generation, the version sold by SAIC's MG brand in Canadian markets between 2021 and 2023, is now experiencing some of the most brutal depreciation of any EV sold through an official Canadian dealer network. MG is a legitimate brand with Chinese SAIC ownership and genuine Canadian dealer presence. First-generation ZS EV buyers paid between $44,000 and $52,000 Canadian through official channels. They had warranty support, dealer networks, and all the confidence of a legitimate franchise purchase. Current used market values for first-generation MG ZS EV units in Canada? Hovering between $18,000 and $23,000. That is a 55 to 60% collapse from original transaction prices on vehicles that are only 2 to 3 years old. The mechanism is a combination of factors working simultaneously. MG launched the heavily updated second-generation ZS EV with dramatically improved range, better onboard technology, significantly enhanced interior quality, and a more competitive price point that makes the first generation look like ancient history by direct comparison. Simultaneously, BYD's Canadian market entry with the Seal and Atto 3 created new competitive pressure at every price point MG had occupied. And the broader narrative around Chinese EV quality, reliability perception, and brand stability has made MG's older generation units difficult to sell at anything approaching reasonable prices. Canadian dealers are sitting on trade-in units they can't move. Private sellers are posting and reposting with price reductions that still can't attract buyers. If you bought a first-generation ZS EV expecting typical EV depreciation curves, you received a Chinese market depreciation curve instead. Those are not the same thing. Number 6 is the Geometry A from Geely, and this one represents a different variety of automotive worthlessness. Not dramatic reliability collapse, not brand bankruptcy, but something arguably more systematically damaging. A complete brand identity abandonment that left every owner holding a vehicle from a name that its own parent company subsequently decided to erase from existence. Geely, the Chinese conglomerate that owns Volvo, Polestar, Lotus, and Zeekr, launched the Geometry brand in 2019 as their dedicated premium EV sub-brand targeting urban professionals who wanted Chinese technology at accessible price points. The Geometry A sedan was the flagship product. Clean modern design, adequate range, Geely's genuinely solid build quality, and competitive pricing at the equivalent of $26,000 to $32,000 Canadian dollars. It should have been a market success by every rational measure. It wasn't, primarily because Geely had created an identity problem with no solution. Zeekr was already serving premium EV buyers. Lynk & Co. was capturing younger tech-forward demographics. BYD was overwhelming the value tier. Geometry occupied a confused middle space that generated insufficient enthusiasm from any specific buyer group. Geely subsequently announced they were merging the Geometry brand entirely into their newer Galaxy EV line, effectively admitting that the Geometry identity had failed to resonate and would be discontinued as a standalone name. When a car brand's own parent corporation publicly abandons that brand's identity, the used buyer confidence destruction is total and immediate. Current Geometry. Units are selling at 58 to 64% below original prices in Chinese markets. International units that arrived in Southeast Asian and Canadian markets at premium import prices are effectively impossible to sell at any rational valuation. The brand name on the badge means nothing to used buyers because the brand officially no longer exists as a coherent entity. Number 5 is the one that should genuinely frighten every enthusiast who values Chinese EV technology. The Aiways U5 and U6 are technically excellent vehicles. Modern design, genuine engineering sophistication, competitive range specifications, and real technology credentials that attracted serious attention from European and international automotive media. Aiways had ambitions that went far beyond China. They pursued aggressive European distribution partnerships, targeted sophisticated international buyers, and positioned themselves as proof that Chinese automakers could compete globally without compromises. Canadian and European early adopters who purchased Aiways vehicles paid the equivalent of 44,000 to 54,000 Canadian dollars. They felt like informed, sophisticated buyers supporting a genuinely promising brand. Then Aiways essentially ran out of money and the situation deteriorated in a way that should serve as a permanent warning. Production slowed dramatically. Key executives departed. The European distribution partnership that had given international buyers confidence collapsed entirely. Official service network access became unreliable in the markets where most international units were operating. Over-the-air updates stopped arriving. Aiways has effectively exited meaningful operations in most international markets. Aiways is among the Chinese EV startups that left the market, with owners left stranded and worried about ongoing vehicle support. Current used Aiways U5 values in European markets where most international units exist have collapsed 65 to 72% from original transaction prices. Units that sold for 40,000 euros equivalent are finding no interested buyers above 11,000 to 14,000 euros. And the truly terrifying element is not the financial loss. It is the practical ownership reality. One European owner documented attempting warranty service for an infotainment system failure. 3 months, multiple service visits, zero resolution because the authorized service center was waiting for technical guidance from a manufacturer that had stopped providing it. Buying a Chinese EV from a brand in financial distress is not just losing money on depreciation. It is potentially purchasing a sophisticated technology product that becomes progressively less functional as software falls behind and the support infrastructure quietly disappears. Number 4 is Leapmotor. Specifically the early generation S01 Coupe and T03 City car produced between 2019 and 2021, and this story has a twist that makes it uniquely damaging for early adopters. Leapmotor built genuine credibility with their vertically integrated technology approach. They developed their own chips, their own camera systems, their own powertrain electronics, and promoted this self-sufficiency as a meaningful competitive advantage. The S01 Sporty Coupe and T03 Urban EV attracted buyers who believed in Leapmotor's technology, philosophy, and paid the equivalent of 19,000 to 29,000 Canadian dollars for early units. Then Stellantis, the global automotive conglomerate behind Jeep, Dodge, Maserati, and Alfa Romeo, acquired a 21% stake in Leapmotor in late 2023 for $1.5 billion and established an international joint venture for distribution. On paper, this sounds like validation. In practice, it created an orphaning problem for every early Leapmotor buyer that is difficult to overstate. The Stellantis partnership repositioned Leapmotor as an entirely different company targeting international markets with new products developed under joint venture oversight. The early generation S01 and T03 units built before this strategic transformation now exist in a bizarre corporate purgatory. The brand is technically growing and increasingly well capitalized, but those specific early vehicles have no upgrade program, no meaningful trade-in benefit from the partnership, and no path forward within the new corporate structure. They compete directly against Leapmotor's vastly superior and more competitively priced current generation products that make the early units look like engineering students' first homework assignment. Early Leapmotor buyers paid for the company's learning curve. The Stellantis money paid for everything that came after. Number 3 is where this list stops being about depreciation math and starts being genuine automotive tragedy, because what happened here involved some of the most beautiful, most innovative vehicles China had ever produced. Human Horizons, the company behind the hi-fi luxury EV brand, filed for pre-bankruptcy restructuring in August 2024, formally ending the story of what many enthusiasts genuinely believed would become China's answer to Ferrari or Porsche. The hi-fi X was breathtaking by any standard. Parametric exterior panels that could be mechanically reconfigured, programmable LED display systems spanning the entire rear fascia, butterfly gull-wing rear doors operated by proprietary hydraulic systems, an interior featuring refrigerators, champagne holders, and technology that made traditional luxury brands look embarrassed. A Hi-Fi X cost 570,000 yuan, equivalent to approximately 97,000 US dollars, and a Hi-Fi Y cost 369,000 yuan, equivalent to approximately 51,000 US dollars. Buyers purchasing these vehicles were acquiring automotive art from what appeared to be a company destined for greatness. In February 2024, Human Horizons suspended production and began closing showrooms before formally entering bankruptcy proceedings that August. The court ruled Human Horizons met the conditions for restructuring after its debts exceeded its assets as of April 2024, having failed to raise sufficient additional funding despite multiple attempts. For Hi-Fi X and Z owners, the financial devastation was was immediate and total. Used units that cost $97,000 equivalent are now listed at $28,000 to $38,000, with almost no buyers materializing at any price. That is a 65 to 72% collapse. But the ownership nightmare goes far beyond the financial loss. The butterfly doors operate on proprietary hydraulic systems that require manufacturer-sourced components and software. The programmable exterior panels need manufacturer cloud infrastructure to function. As one HiFi owner told journalists, they were now extra careful while driving, worried they wouldn't be able to get the car fixed in case of an accident because the company that built it can no longer support it. You could buy automotive perfection. You accidentally bought a $90,000 liability, and that is China's EV market at its most painfully ironic. Number 2 is where financial disaster becomes documented bankruptcy, affecting 100,000 real owners who are now watching their cars quietly die from the inside. WM Motor was the largest Chinese electric car maker to become insolvent at the time, having sold approximately 100,000 vehicles between 2019 and 2022 before filing for bankruptcy in October 2023. WM Motor, also known by their Weltmeister branding in international markets, had been one of China's most credible EV startups. Backed by Baidu, endorsed by major Chinese investors, and generating genuine commercial traction with over 100,000 delivered vehicles, they were not a marginal player. The EX5 SUV was a practical, well-built product. The W6 featured genuinely innovative automated parking technology that attracted serious media attention. Early buyers paid the equivalent of $32,000 to $46,000 Canadian dollars for vehicles they had every rational reason to trust. The bankruptcy was sudden and brutal for owners in ways that extend far beyond simple financial loss. WM Motor's vehicles depended heavily on cloud-connected services for navigation updates, over-the-air software improvements, remote vehicle management, and the W6's signature automated parking system. Following bankruptcy, WM Motor owners began complaining of system glitches, with experts warning that unpatched bugs could eventually turn the cars into bricks if critical software issues go unaddressed. The automated parking feature that justified premium pricing for W6 buyers stopped functioning reliably. Navigation databases froze at bankruptcy-era maps. Current WM Motor used values have collapsed 70 to 80% from original prices. The EX5 units that cost $38,000 Canadian dollars equivalent are finding no buyers above $7,000 to $9,000. And even those transactions are rare because informed buyers understand the ongoing software risk they are inheriting. China's car sales regulations require suppliers to ensure parts availability for at least 10 years if they stop producing a model, but enforcement has sometimes been difficult, leaving owners in a legal gray zone with no practical recourse. The car still drives. The smart technology that justified the purchase price is dying in real time. And then there's number 1, the most catastrophic, most spectacular, most financially devastating automobile collapse in Chinese history, and possibly the most reckless purchase any vehicle buyer anywhere in the world has made in the last decade. Evergrande, the Chinese property developer that became globally infamous for its debt crisis exceeding $300 billion, decided in 2019 that amid this financial catastrophe they should also build electric vehicles. The logic was genuinely unclear to most external observers. That didn't stop Evergrande from launching Henchi as their EV sub-brand, announcing 9 separate vehicle models simultaneously to maximize publicity, investing enormous public relations sums into manufacturing facilities, and beginning deliveries of the Henchi 5 SUV in 2022. Deliveries began while the parent company's debt crisis was openly dominating global financial news. Buyers who purchased Henchi 5 units at equivalent prices of $28,000 to $36,000 Canadian dollars were making a purchase that most independent financial analysts were already publicly describing as a serious risk. Early buyers chose to believe that Evergrande's stated investment scale meant the brand was simply too large and too visible to fail completely. They made a catastrophically expensive misjudgment. Henchi production collapsed entirely by late 2022. Employee salaries went unpaid across multiple consecutive months. Manufacturing facilities were abandoned mid-production run. The Henchi 5 became an orphaned vehicle with no operational manufacturer, no functioning service network, no software development pipeline, and no parts supply chain. Current used market data shows Henchi 5 units attempting to sell for the equivalent of $4,000 to $7,000 Canadian dollars. That represents an 80 to 87% collapse from original transaction prices on vehicles that are less than 3 years old. But here is the detail that elevates this beyond every other story on this list and makes it the most devastating. Significant numbers of Henchi buyers placed purchase deposits and never received their vehicles at all. Real money transferred to a company that was simultaneously managing a $300 billion debt crisis disappeared, along with Henchi's operational capacity before the cars ever existed in buyers' driveways. You could lose the entirety of your investment before taking a single delivery. The Henchi 5 is not just the most worthless Chinese car of 2026, it is the clearest possible demonstration demonstration that China's EV market is simultaneously the most exciting and most financially dangerous automotive space on Earth. Here is what every Canadian considering a Chinese EV purchase should take from this list. The technology is often genuinely superior. The innovation is frequently breathtaking. The prices are sometimes insultingly competitive compared to Western alternatives, but the market is also culling brands at a rate that has no parallel in automotive history. Approximately 400 of 500 Chinese EV companies have ceased operations since 2018, with around 160,000 car owners left stranded by companies that sold them vehicles and subsequently disappeared. The winners, BYD, NIO's current generation, Zeekr, Li Auto's L-Series, Huawei AITO, are genuinely exceptional products from companies with real financial strength. The losers destroyed their buyers financially in ways that took years to become fully visible.